The announcement came not through a press release, not through a royal spokesperson stepping before cameras, and not through the carefully worded statements that Buckingham Palace has mastered over centuries of public relations. It came, as so many of the most consequential royal decisions do, through silence, through absence, through the quiet rearrangement of symbols that the British monarchy has always used to communicate what it cannot, or will not, say aloud. King Charles III has reportedly issued a formal directive concerning the allocation of a significant piece from the Crown's ceremonial jewelry collection, specifically, a diamond choker long associated with Queen Camilla's public royal identity, with the piece now understood to be transitioning toward Catherine, Princess of Wales. And while Buckingham Palace has maintained its customary silence on internal jewelry matters, the ripple effects of this reported decision have moved well beyond palace corridors and into the broader conversation about what the monarchy is becoming and who will define it. To understand why this matters, why a necklace, however spectacular, can generate this level of institutional tension, one must first understand the role that jewelry plays within the British royal system. This is not merely about adornment. The British Royal Collection Trust oversees one of the most significant assemblages of historic jewelry in the world. The collection includes pieces dating back centuries, many of which carry not only monetary value but profound constitutional and symbolic weight. According to the Royal Collection Trust's own published guidance, items within the collection are managed as national treasures held in trust by the sovereign. They are not personal property in the ordinary sense, but institutional assets that move according to tradition, protocol, and royal discretion. This is a critical distinction. When a piece of jewelry from the royal collection is worn by a member of the family, it is not simply a fashion choice. It is a statement. It signals proximity to the throne, confirmation of standing, and institutional endorsement. Royal historians have long noted that Queen Elizabeth II was exceptionally deliberate about this dimension of jewelry. Her biographers, including those who contributed to the authoritative accounts published during and after her reign, consistently described how she used specific brooches, tiaras, and necklaces to send messages that her public words could not always convey, honoring visiting heads of state with pieces connected to their nations, or signaling warmth and continuity through heirlooms worn at moments of royal transition. Hugo Vickers, one of Britain's most respected royal biographers and a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, has written extensively about the communicative function of royal dress and adornment. The principle is well established within serious royal scholarship. In a family that cannot always speak freely, objects do the speaking. Against that backdrop, the reported transfer of a diamond choker from Camilla's ceremonial wardrobe allocation to Catherine's is not a minor administrative footnote. It is, if confirmed, a deliberate act of institutional communication. Queen Camilla's journey to her current position has been, by any measure, one of the most remarkable rehabilitations in modern royal history. When she and Charles were married in April 2005 at Windsor Guildhall, the first civil marriage ceremony for a British heir to the throne, public opinion in Britain was, to put it mildly, complicated. Polling at the time reflected significant public ambivalence. For a considerable portion of the British public, Camilla remained inseparably associated with the breakdown of the marriage between Charles and Princess Diana. What followed over the subsequent 2 decades was a patient, carefully managed process of public acceptance. Camilla attended engagements, supported charities, and gradually, very gradually, became a familiar and, for many, a respected presence at Charles's side. When Queen Elizabeth II died in September 2022 and Charles became king, the question of Camilla's title had already been resolved the previous February, when the late Queen issued a statement expressing her wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when that time came. It was an extraordinary gesture of institutional endorsement from a monarch not known for them. The jewelry she wore during major public engagements during this period carried weight in that context. Each significant piece was, in its own way, a marker of how far she had traveled from the difficult early years of her public life. A diamond choker, particularly one with history connected to formal royal occasions, would naturally become associated with that hard-won standing. This is precisely why the reported transfer carries such emotional charge. For Camilla's supporters within and beyond palace circles, it is not simply about a piece of jewelry being reassigned. It is about what that reassignment implies about where power and symbolic authority now reside. The transformation of Catherine, Princess of Wales, from a young woman navigating an extraordinarily difficult public transition into one of the monarchy's most trusted and strategically important figures has been one of the defining royal stories of the past decade. When Catherine married Prince William in April 2011, she entered an institution with an often brutal history of handling those who marry into it. The pressure was immense, the scrutiny relentless, and the emotional demands, as her sister-in-law Meghan later described publicly, were significant. Catherine, by most accounts, responded by developing a discipline and public composure that royal observers have consistently noted as exceptional. Her work with early childhood development causes, formalized through the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood launched in 2021, reflected a deliberate effort to carve out a meaningful and substantive public role grounded in evidence and credibility. The center's flagship report, Unlocking the Early Years, drew on research from neuroscience and developmental psychology and was met with genuine engagement from policymakers, not merely polite acknowledgement. Her illness and recovery period, publicly announced in early 2024, and her eventual return to public duties was managed with a transparency and personal courage that significantly deepened public affection. The video message she released in March 2024, confirming her cancer diagnosis and asking for privacy, was widely praised for its honesty and dignity. When she appeared at Trooping the Color in June 2024, the public response was overwhelming. By the time the reported jewelry discussions began circulating through palace circles, Catherine was not simply a popular princess. She was arguably the most publicly trusted figure within the immediate royal family, and institutions, particularly one as symbolically oriented as the British monarchy, respond to that kind of public trust with practical allocation of authority. King Charles III came to the throne in circumstances that would challenge any monarch. He was 73 years old at his accession, the oldest person ever to become British sovereign. He had waited longer for the throne than any heir in British history. And within months of his coronation in May 2023, his health became a matter of public concern, with Buckingham Palace announcing in February 2024 that he had been diagnosed with a form of cancer. The king's response to his diagnosis was, in keeping with his character, a combination of pragmatism and duty. He continued working where his medical team permitted, maintained public engagements, and worked to ensure the institution remained stable and functional. But the reality of his health situation inevitably accelerated conversations within the palace about succession planning, institutional continuity, and the careful management of royal authority during a period of uncertainty. Royal constitutionalists have noted that the British monarchy, perhaps more than any other institution, is preoccupied with continuity precisely because continuity is its primary argument for existence. The Crown's claim to legitimacy rests not on democratic mandate but on the unbroken thread of tradition, succession, and institutional persistence stretching back centuries. Any threat to that thread, a monarch incapacitated by illness, a family publicly divided, symbolic authority appearing confused or contested, is treated as a matter of genuine institutional urgency. It is within this context that Charles's reported decision regarding the diamond choker becomes legible. This is not, in that reading, an act of coldness toward Camilla, nor a declaration of preference between his wife and his daughter-in-law. It is, rather, a calculated institutional act, the kind of decision a monarch makes when he is thinking not about the present moment but about the decades that follow. Charles has spent a lifetime studying the history of the institution he now leads. He has written and spoken extensively about tradition, continuity, and the responsibilities of monarchy. The decision, if accurately reported, reflects a logic he has articulated in other contexts, that the Crown must always prioritize its long-term integrity over short-term personal comfort. Britain's constitutional arrangements regarding the monarchy are codified through a combination of statute, convention, and tradition. The Regency Acts, most recently updated in 2022, make formal provision for circumstances in which the sovereign is incapacitated. The Councillors of State, a formal group empowered to carry out certain royal functions in the king's absence, were updated in 2022 to include Prince William, reflecting his centrality to institutional continuity. William's preparation for kingship has been, by royal standards, unusually systematic. He completed a full term of military service, including active deployment, before moving into full-time royal duties. He has engaged substantively with climate policy through the Earthshot Prize, which he founded with the explicit intention of creating a lasting legacy institution rather than a charity dependent on celebrity endorsement. He has worked closely with palace officials on the long-term reform of the royal family's working structure, including the significant reduction in the number of working royals announced in the period following the late Queen's death. He is, in short, not simply waiting for the crown. He is, by most credible accounts, actively preparing the institutional architecture that will support his reign. And Catherine is central to that architecture. The Princess of Wales occupies a constitutional position that is straightforward but symbolically enormous. She is the future queen. Not queen consort in the sense that Camilla is, a spouse elevated by marriage to a sitting sovereign, but the wife of the heir apparent, destined to become queen alongside a king who will have been prepared for the role over decades. That distinction matters, both constitutionally and symbolically. When the palace reportedly began directing ceremonial allocations with an eye toward continuity planning, a phrase that, as noted earlier, sounds administrative but carries enormous institutional weight, the movement of significant symbolic items toward Catherine reflects that constitutional logic operating in its most direct form. It would be a mistake, however, to analyze this reported situation purely through the lens of institutional calculation. The people at the center of these events are human beings navigating relationships of extraordinary complexity under conditions of relentless public scrutiny. Charles and Camilla's relationship has been, whatever its turbulent history, one of genuine and enduring personal partnership. Those who have observed them closely over many years, including journalists and royal correspondents with long professional access to the palace, have consistently described a couple with deep compatibility, shared interests in history, gardens, and rural life, and a mutual support that has carried them through decades of controversy. For Charles to be in a position where institutional logic appears to require symbolic diminishment of his wife's standing is, by any measure, personally painful. Camilla, for her part, has navigated the public role of queen consort with a dry self-awareness and occasional humor that has gradually won over significant portions of the British public. Her commitment to literacy causes through the Queen's Reading Room, which she has championed with genuine personal passion, reflects an authenticity that purely performance-driven public figures rarely manage. She is not simply a ceremonial presence. She is a person with real investment in the role she has come to occupy. The suggestion that she might have experienced the reported jewelry transfer as a form of institutional message, even if delivered through the cold language of protocol, is entirely credible from a human perspective. The palace's management of symbolic authority is sophisticated, but it is not bloodless. People feel these decisions. At the same time, Catherine and William have navigated their own extraordinary pressures. The period surrounding Catherine's illness and recovery was, by the family's own admission, deeply difficult. William managed public duties while supporting his wife through a serious health crisis, while simultaneously being subject to the unrelenting attention that accompanies being first in line to the throne. The composure with which both of them handled that period earned them considerable public respect. That Catherine reportedly received this significant symbolic transfer precisely during a period of her renewed public strength carries its own meaning. It suggests the palace's assessment of the moment, and of her readiness to carry the institutional weight that comes with it. Taken in isolation, the transfer of a single piece of jewelry, however historic and however symbolically loaded, might be categorized as an internal matter of limited consequence. But royal observers and constitutional commentators have consistently noted that inside the House of Windsor, nothing of this nature happens in isolation. The British monarchy communicates through pattern, not proclamation. A single jewel loan carries limited meaning. A pattern of symbolic reallocation toward an heir and their consort, occurring alongside structural changes to the distribution of royal duties, alongside formal updates to succession and regency arrangements, alongside the visible acceleration of the heir's institutional preparation, that pattern carries significant meaning indeed. What the reported diamond choker transfer appears to represent, viewed in that broader context, is one visible moment in a longer and quieter transition of institutional authority. The monarchy is preparing for a reign that has not yet begun. It is doing so in the way the British Crown has always managed such preparations, not with announcements, not with declared policy shifts, but with the steady, patient rearrangement of symbols, duties, and access. For historians of the monarchy, this pattern is deeply familiar. The years before Elizabeth II's accession saw a similar quiet preparation, the gradual transfer of engagement responsibilities, the increasing centrality of the then Princess Elizabeth in public ceremonial life, the careful positioning of her as the visible future of an institution navigating the enormous pressures of post-war Britain. The mechanics of royal succession preparation are remarkably consistent across generations, even as the specific context changes. It is worth being precise about what palace protocol does and does not govern in circumstances like these. The royal collection, as noted, is managed by the Royal Collection Trust as assets held in trust for the nation by the sovereign. The sovereign has discretion over the ceremonial loan and allocation of pieces from this collection to working members of the royal family. This means that a decision to redirect a piece from one member's ceremonial allocation to another is, formally, within the sovereign's prerogative. It does not require public consultation. It does not require formal announcement. It can be, and typically is, managed entirely through the internal administrative processes of the palace household. This is precisely why such decisions carry the particular weight that they do. They cannot be publicly challenged without appearing to challenge the sovereign's prerogative. They cannot be openly debated without the debate itself becoming the story. And they cannot easily be reversed once implemented, because reversal would require acknowledging that the original decision was made under pressure, which would itself become a story with significant implications. The palace's management of the reported transfer through administrative channels, rather than through any form of public communication, is therefore not evasiveness. It is, from an institutional perspective, the correct and conventional approach. The silence is not absence of meaning. It is, in the language of royal protocol, the statement itself. The public response to the reported transfer, playing out through media commentary, social platforms, and the broader conversation about the royal family's future, has been notable for what it reveals about the current state of public feeling toward the monarchy's key figures. Support for Catherine has been consistently strong in British public opinion polling throughout the past several years, particularly following her illness and recovery. YouGov polling conducted in 2024 placed both William and Catherine among the most positively regarded members of the royal family, with Catherine in particular receiving high approval ratings that reflected the public respect earned through her conduct during a difficult personal period. Support for Camilla, while improved significantly from the difficult early years, remains more complex. She is respected by many, but the association with the most publicly painful chapter of Charles and Diana's marriage has never entirely disappeared from public consciousness. That complexity means that any development which appears to affect her standing generates immediate and polarized reaction, with supporters defending her record and critics resurrecting old grievances. This polarization is, in itself, a form of institutional risk for the palace. A monarchy that appears internally divided is a monarchy that invites questions about its coherence and its future. Managing that perception is as important to Buckingham Palace as managing any specific policy or protocol question. The relative public silence from William and Catherine, no statements, no visible reaction, no indication of triumph or explanation, reflects sophisticated management of that risk. Whatever satisfaction or relief their circle may feel about the direction of events, the public face must remain one of disciplined continuity. This is not merely personal restraint. It is institutional strategy. The long history of British monarchy offers several instructive precedents for the current moment, though none are perfectly analogous to circumstances that are genuinely novel in many respects. The transition from George VI to Elizabeth II saw a young, relatively inexperienced queen move into a role of enormous complexity with speed and discipline that subsequently defined an entire era. The preparation for that transition, while necessarily accelerated by the late king's illness and death, involved a sustained period of symbolic and institutional positioning that historians have since examined in detail. The transition from Elizabeth II to Charles III was, given the extraordinary length of Elizabeth's reign, the longest succession preparation in British royal history. Charles himself spent decades developing expertise in areas ranging from architectural heritage to organic farming to interfaith dialogue, building an identity and institutional profile that could support an eventual reign. The preparation now apparently underway for William's eventual accession is, in important ways, more deliberate and more institutionally sophisticated than any previous modern royal succession preparation. This reflects both the lessons learned from previous transitions and the specific circumstances of a monarchy operating under levels of media and public scrutiny that have no true historical parallel. In that context, the reported symbolic reallocation of a significant crown jewel toward the future queen is consistent with a historical pattern of succession preparation, accelerated, perhaps, by the urgency that Charles's health situation introduces, but recognizable as part of the institutional logic that has sustained the British crown through centuries of change. There is a particular kind of institutional decision that changes everything, not through drama or declaration, but through the quiet, irreversible rearrangement of symbols that everyone understands and no one will explicitly explain. King Charles's reported directive regarding the diamond choker appears to be exactly that kind of decision. Whatever its specific administrative mechanics, whatever the precise sequence of conversations and authorizations that preceded it, whatever the personal dynamics it has disturbed within the royal household, its meaning is legible to everyone who understands how the British monarchy communicates. The crown is preparing its future. It is doing so in the way it has always prepared its futures, through patience, through symbol, and through the cold, clear logic of institutional survival. Catherine, Princess of Wales, is increasingly the visible center of that future. The evidence for this does not rest only on a reported jewelry transfer. It rests on a pattern of institutional positioning, public trust, and structural preparation that has been building for years. For Camilla, the reported development represents a painful narrowing of the symbolic space she has occupied, earned through decades of endurance and patience, at precisely the moment when her husband faces his most serious personal challenges. That pain is real and deserves acknowledgement. It does not diminish her achievements or her ongoing role. But it does reflect the unflinching logic of an institution that has always placed its own continuity above the comfort of individuals, however beloved. For Charles, the decision, if accurately reported, represents the kind of sacrifice that monarchy demands from its leaders even at the most personal level. He has spent his life preparing to put the institution above himself. That this now requires decisions that cause pain to those he loves most is perhaps the final and most difficult expression of that lifelong preparation. And for the British public watching the quiet repositioning of symbols within the House of Windsor, the message, even unspoken, even officially unconfirmed, is becoming increasingly clear.